Today, we are diving deep into Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o's incredible novel, Petals of Blood. Now, on the surface, this is a murder mystery, but if you dig just a little bit deeper, you'll find it's really an autopsy of a nation, a story about Kenya's painful, complicated journey from colonialism to a new kind of independence. So, our story kicks off in this sleepy, traditional village called Ilmorog. It's one of those places that feels like it's been untouched by time. But, as we're about to see, the so-called forces of progress are barreling down and they're about to change everything, for better and, well, for worse. And all that change? It comes to a head in one single explosive event. The brand new, state-of-the-art brewery, the ultimate symbol of this new Ilmorog, is burned to the ground. And inside, they find the bodies of 3 of the country's most powerful new capitalists. A huge investigation kicks off, and the entire story is really trying to answer one question: who is truly to blame for all this? To get to the bottom of that, we first have to understand the fire itself and the new world that it destroyed. So let's start by taking a closer look at the crime scene in what the book calls a fire in New Ilmorog. Okay, so right at the heart of this whole investigation, you've got 4 people. Their lives are completely tangled up with Ilmorog's fate, and their stories reveal these 4 tangled destinies that all lead to that fire. First up, let's meet Munera. He's the local school teacher. He's an outsider who basically ran away to Ilmorog to escape his own life, only to get caught in a web that's way more complicated than anything he left behind. Munera is just a walk-in contradiction. He bailed on his rich, overbearing dad to find some peace, but you know what? He's never really at peace. He's totally obsessed with Wanja, but she's not into him. He tries so hard to be apolitical, to just keep his head down and stay out of the struggle, but the struggle finds him anyway. And bubbling under all that is this deep, gnawing religious guilt that eventually just pushes him over the edge into fanaticism. And this quote, man, it just perfectly captures his inner conflict. He's basically haunted by what he sees as his own failures, which makes him passive and kind of resentful, just a spectator in his own life, right up until the very end. Then we've got Abdullah. Now, on the surface, he's just this quiet, handicapped shopkeeper. But his small life in Ilmorog is hiding a past that is anything but small. It's a past that's packed with heroism, sacrifice, and a whole lot of pain. You see, Abdallah is a veteran of the Mau Mau Rebellion, the actual revolution that won Kenya its independence. He lost his leg fighting for that freedom, and when the villagers make this great journey to the city for help, he becomes their storyteller, their heart and soul. But the new Kenya that he fought and bled for, it's just left him cynical and bitter, forced to watch as all the promises of independence just go sour. Okay, let's turn to Wanja, and honestly, she's probably the most dynamic character in the whole novel. She's passionate, incredibly tough, and the granddaughter of Nyakanyua, who's one of Ilmorog's most respected elders. Wanja's life has just been a constant battle for survival. She gets kicked out of school after a rich guy gets her pregnant and then abandons her, so she becomes a barmaid, even a prostitute, just to get by. She comes back to Ilmorog looking for a safe haven, but gets swept up in its massive transformation. She ends up becoming this successful, powerful businesswoman, but that success comes with a huge moral price tag. And this line describes her internal struggle perfectly. She was tormented with the sense of colluding with evil. Wanja really embodies the impossible choices people have to make when the world backs them into a corner. And finally, we have Karega. He's the idealist, the intellectual, the young activist who doesn't just think the system is flawed. He believes it needs to be torn down completely and rebuilt from scratch. Karega's political fire is really forged in loss. He gets expelled from a fancy school for joining a strike against its colonial-era rules. He loses his first love, who happens to be Munira's sister, to suicide. But these tragedies don't break him. They radicalize him. He transforms into this powerful union organizer, completely dedicated to fighting the corruption he sees everywhere. So here's the thing. These 4 aren't just suspects in a lineup. They're all part of this tangled ecosystem of love, rivalry, and need. You've got Munira's unrequited love for Wanja, which fuels his jealousy of Karega. And Wanja, she's torn between Karega's fire and Abdullah's quiet strength. Their lives are just completely woven together. But, to really understand these 4, you have to look back at the history that made them, and that brings us to the ghosts of the rebellion. The biggest ghost looming over everything is the Mau Mau Rebellion. Now, this was a brutal,
bloody uprising back in the 1950s against British colonial rule. It was the war that gave birth to modern Kenya, and its legacy, both the heroism and the trauma, is absolutely everywhere in this story.
And this history isn't some abstract concept. For these characters, it is deeply personal. Real-life heroes like Dedan Kimathi, a Mama general, are talked about like legends. But for our main characters, the fight is even closer to home. Karega's own brother, Ndingiri, was a freedom fighter who was executed. And Abdullah, who was his close friend, carries the literal and emotional scars of that war every single day.
But the fight didn't just end with independence. The old white colonial masters were simply replaced by a new class of exploiters, which brings us to the new masters.
And nothing illustrates the hypocrisy of this new elite better than the character of Chewy. As a student, this guy was a revolutionary. He led strikes against his oppressive colonial-style school. But what happens when he comes back as the school's first black headmaster? He becomes a black replica of the guy he replaced, crushing the exact same kind of student protests he used to lead. Which brings us right back to the 3 men who died in that brewery fire. See, they weren't random victims. Kinemiria was the rich industrialist who not only exploited Wanja when she was young, but also betrayed freedom fighters like Abdullah. Mzigo was Manira's old boss who helped big business crush local shops. And Derry Wariera was the corrupt local politician who only cared about his own power. These guys were the human faces of the new corruption.
So you see, this wasn't just a simple case of arson. It was a violent collision between the ghosts of the past and the greed of the present. And it created this brutal new reality for everyone in Ilmer Og, a reality defined by one simple philosophy: eat or be eaten. This phrase, which is Wanja's personal motto, pretty much becomes the dark, beating heart of the whole novel. In this new Kenya, the old traditions of community and looking out for each other have been replaced by this savage, capitalist mindset. It's the same old colonial exploitation, just with new faces in charge. You either exploit other people or you get exploited. It's that simple. Eat or be eaten.
And so Petals of Blood leaves us with this haunting, deeply uncomfortable question that sticks with you long after you finish the book. As we watch these 4 characters trying to navigate the ruins of their hopes and dreams, we're forced to ask ourselves, when the old world is destroyed, what does it actually cost to build a new one? And who is it that ultimately has to pay the price?